As the Enlightenment fostered advancements in literacy, mathematics, and science across Europe, so too did the extraordinary intellect of Leonhard Euler flourish. He produced over 800 works throughout his lifetime, remarkably completing more than half of them after losing his sight. Born on April 15, 1707, in Basel, Switzerland, to Pastor Paul and Margarete Euler, Leonhard spent his early years in the tranquil village of Hinn. This peaceful countryside upbringing is believed to have cultivated his calm and steadfast demeanor, enabling him to maintain exceptional focus and resilience, even after succumbing to blindness. By the tender age of 7, he was already delving into an advanced algebra textbook, a subject far beyond the grasp of most children or even adults of that era. At 13, Euler enrolled at the University of Basel, an institution that, like many European universities of the time, admitted students at a much younger age than is customary today. While the university itself lacked significant prestige, Euler was fortunate to receive tutelage from the brilliant mathematician Johan Bern, a leading figure of the era. Isaac Newton was in his twilight years, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz had already passed away. Although Bernoulli's busy schedule prevented him from offering private lessons, he graciously invited Euler to visit every Saturday afternoon to discuss any mathematical hurdles he faced. Euler deeply appreciated this arrangement, noting that resolving one objection often clarified 10 others, which he considered the most effective way to progress in mathematics. After earning his bachelor's and master's degrees, Euler began studying theology, as his father hoped he would follow in his footsteps as a pastor. However, Leonhard's true passion lay in mathematics. Bernoulli, a former classmate of Paul Euler, reportedly intervened, convincing him that his son was a prodigy destined to succeed him. Paul acquiesced, allowing his son to fully commit to mathematics. Though Leonhard never abandoned his Christian faith, Euler saw the inherent harmony in mathematics as evidence of a divine creator. His renowned equation, Euler's identity, elegantly unifies 5 fundamental constants, blending real and imaginary numbers in a simple yet profound way that ultimately equates to 0. Establishing a mathematical career in 18th century Switzerland proved challenging due to limited opportunities in the small country. At 19, he applied for a physics professorship at the University of Basel, but was deemed too young for the position. In retrospect, this rejection was a hidden blessing. To reach his full potential, Euler required the collaborative environment of a larger institution. As Ronald S. Kallinger, author of a comprehensive biography on Euler, explains, the social, institutional, and intellectual setting significantly influences the intensity of collaboration and debate, playing a crucial role in determining which questions and problems become central. Such an environment existed in one place, Russia, then a vast and powerful empire. An opportunity arose for Euler at the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences when his close friend Daniel Bernoulli, son of Johan Bernoulli and a fellow Academy member, recommended him for a position. On April 5, 1727, Euler embarked on a journey from Basel, traveling along the Rhine River and arriving in St. Petersburg in May. Though initially offered an adjunct role in the Department of Physiology, he shifted his focus to mathematics, collaborating with brilliant minds like Jacob Hermann and Daniel Bernoulli, and frequently corresponding with Christian Goldbach, who was in Moscow. In St. Petersburg, Euler delved into numerous captivating challenges. One of his most renowned was the 7 bridges of Königsberg problem. The Prussian city of Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, Russia, was bisected by a river with 7 bridges connecting 4 distinct landmasses. Residents often pondered if it was possible to traverse each bridge exactly once and return to their starting point. Euler approached this by simplifying the city's layout. He depicted each land area as a node or dot, and each bridge as an edge or line, connecting these nodes. The crux of solving this problem lay in understanding the number of bridges or edges connected to each land area, a concept referred to as the degree of a node. For instance, node A had 5 connection points, while nodes B, C, and D each had 3. For someone to cross every bridge precisely once and conclude their journey at the starting point, they would need to depart from each node via a different bridge than the one they used for arrival. This means every node, except for the journey's start and end points, must have an even degree, an even number of connected bridges. Significant career advancement materialized in 1733 when Daniel Bernoulli decided to leave St. Petersburg, weary of the harsh Russian winters and still grieving the death of his brother Nicholas just 8 months after their arrival. Euler succeeded Bernoulli as the senior chair of mathematics at the Academy. This promotion brought a substantial salary increase, enabling him to propose to Katharina Giselle, the daughter of a Swiss-born artist working in St. Petersburg. Dear Timasma married in January 1734, and their first child, Johann, was born that November. The couple would go on to have 13 children in total, though only 5 survived infancy. Euler is famously said to have made some of his most significant mathematical discoveries, with a child on his knee and a cat on his shoulder. One such discovery was the solution to a problem that had baffled mathematics for nearly a century, the Basel problem. This problem involves summing the infinite series of reciprocals of integers squared. In simpler terms, it asks what number you get if you continuously add smaller and smaller fractions forever. Euler worked on this problem intermittently for years and finally solved it in 1735. What other famous mathematical problems did Euler tackle during his time in St. Petersburg or later in his career? Euler's solution to the Basel problem remarkably unveiled a hidden link between an abstract concept in number theory and pi, the geometric constant traditionally associated with circles. This ability to uncover connections between seemingly unrelated mathematical domains was a hallmark of his genius. While solidifying his reputation, Euler's health took a turn in his 30s as he suffered from severe fevers that led to blindness in his right eye. His grandson-in-law, mathematician Nicholas Fuchs, attributed this loss of sight to eye strain from 3 days of intense work in 1735. However, historian Ronald Callinger suggests it began with a sudden health crisis in 1738. Collinger explains that great stress leads to a high fever, which together with an infection produces an eye abscess that contributes to the evolution of blindness. Regardless of its cause, Euler remained undeterred. As Fuchs observed, he prioritized his work over even food. Amidst his health struggles, Prussian King Frederick the Great sought to recruit Euler to transform the Berlin Academy into a leading scientific institution. In 1748, Euler published one of mathematics' most seminal works, Introduction to the Analysis of the Infinite. In this work, he defined a function as a rule that assigns a single output to each such as y equals x squared, where the rule squares x to yield y. This expansive definition of a function applicable to all values of x laid the groundwork for modern algebra, calculus, and graphing. One of the most crucial functions Euler explored is the exponential function x, where e is a special constant approximately equal to 2.718. Exponential functions are fundamental for modeling real-world phenomena like population growth and compound interest. Euler's brilliance spanned numerous areas of mathematics. In geometry, for instance, he discovered that for any polyhedron, a three-dimensional figure with flat faces, straight edges, and sharp corners, the number of vertices minus the number of edges plus the number of faces always equals 2, VE plus F2. Euler enjoyed complete freedom to pursue his work in Berlin, as King Frederick, preoccupied with the Silesian Wars against Imperial Austria, did not interfere with his activities at the Academy. This period was a time of contentment for Euler. Euler once famously remarked, "The king calls me his professor, and I think I am the happiest man in the world." However, this contentment was short-lived. After the conclusion of the war in 1745, King Frederick shifted his focus to domestic affairs, including the Academy. The king held a rather dismissive view of Euler, openly preferring French intellectuals like Voltaire and valuing literature and philosophy over abstract mathematics. One particular incident highlighted his disdain for mathematics. In 1749, the king tasked Euler with designing a hydraulic system to power the fountains at his Sanssouci Palace in Potsdam, hoping they would spray higher than those at the Palace of Versailles. Unfortunately, the wooden pipes couldn't withstand the high water pressure, and even reinforcing them with metal rims proved futile. The pipe's diameter was also too small to provide sufficient water flow. Frustrated by the failure, Frederick reportedly quipped to Voltaire, "Vanity of vanities, vanity of mathematics." Euler, lacking practical engineering experience, had not accounted for friction or material limitations. Yet, he didn't let this setback deter him. He would later master the behavior of fluids in his groundbreaking work on fluid dynamics in 1757. His equations of motion reveal how forces like pressure and gravity interact to govern fluid flow. Imagine water moving through a slightly tilted pipe. If we focus on a small section of this water, two primary forces act upon it. The pressure at the lower end pushes the fluid upward, while the opposing pressure from the higher end resists. the flow. As the fluid ascends, pressure decreases along its length, creating a pressure difference that propels the flow. Additionally, gravity exerts a downward resisting force. Despite these opposing forces, the water flows upward because the pressure difference at the lower end is powerful enough to overcome both the opposing pressure and gravity. Even with all of Euler's accomplishments, the king continued to slight him. When the Academy's president, French mathematician and philosopher Pierre-Louis Maupertuis, passed away, the king refused to consider Euler as his successor, favoring the French intellectual Jean-Laurent d'Alembert instead. When d'Alembert declined, unwilling to leave his comfortable life in Paris, the king appointed himself deputy president. Further demonstrating his lack of regard, Frederick also refused Euler's request to secure military positions for his sons. As Arthur Callinger put it, Euler now decided that he and his family should leave. To remain would be disgraceful. Coincidentally, there was one place eager to welcome him back. Catherine the Great desired Euler's return to St. Petersburg to revitalize the Academy, which had fallen into decline. She also agreed to secure positions for Euler's 3 sons. When Euler requested to be released from his contract, Frederick was furious. He ignored Euler's first 2 requests and attempted to placate him after receiving a third, writing in response, "I would like to let you know that you will please me if you desist from this demand." Eventually, to avoid a public scandal and to avoid antagonizing the Russian Empress, Frederick reluctantly agreed to release Euler, writing, "I permit you to quit in order to go to Russia." He didn't even offer a word of thanks for Euler's service. Euler arrived in St. Petersburg on July 28, 1766. By then, a cataract in his remaining good left eye had impaired his vision to the point where he couldn't distinguish between a blank page and one with writing. Euler humorously remarked, "Now I will have fewer distractions." Despite being blind, he produced nearly half of his life's work during this period, authoring over 400 papers, thanks to his incredible memory and ability to perform complex calculations entirely in his head. With the assistance of an unemployed tailor, Euler dictated his popular text, Elements of Algebra, aimed at making mathematics accessible to a wider audience. By the end of their collaboration, the tailor himself could solve complex algebraic problems, a testament to Euler's teaching prowess. Euler's blindness made him deeply reliant on those around him, not only for dictating his work, but also in times of crisis. In May 1771, a devastating fire swept through St. Peter's, destroying over 500 homes, including his own. His servant, Peter Grimm, bravely scrambled to find a ladder and climbed to the 2nd floor to rescue the blind mathematician. Later that year, in September 1771, Euler underwent cataract surgery in the hope of restoring vision to his left eye. While the surgery initially improved his sight, a lack of proper post-surgical care, combined with a large incision, led to complications, likely an infection, leaving him completely blind once again, determined not to rely solely on his children. For help, Euler remarried his wife Katerina's half-sister, Salome Abigail Giselle, after Katerina passed away in November 1773 at the age of 66. Toward the end of his life, Euler suffered from frequent bouts of vertigo as his health declined. On September 18, 1783, he spent his final day much like any other. He taught mathematics to his grandchildren and discussed the upward motion of hot air balloons with his guests. He took a nap after lunch and in the afternoon smoked his pipe. Moments later, the pipe dropped to the floor. While reaching for it, he suddenly clasped hands to his forehead and uttered his final words, "Ich sterbe, I am dying." He had suffered a stroke and passed away that night at the age of 76.